The defensive line's a bit of a problem. That's not on Luke Fickell. Locked on Badgers, let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Badger fam? Welcome to Locked On Badgers After Dark. Can't sleep? Let's podcast. Let's hang. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm your host, Brian Herring, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, appreciate the absolute ever freaking heck out of all of you. I don't even know where I'm going with that, but thank you so much for tuning in as always. Talking about some quarterback questions for next year, why I'm getting chatter and questions about Tyler Van Dyke, the linebacker room, which I think was the staff's one of their big failings this offseason. And let's talk defensive line. I almost wanted to call this show Real Talk because there's been so much back and forth lately. And to some degree, I get it. Like, this season has kind of spiraled and people are just kind of tired of it. Like, it is what it is. It has not been the season we wanted, and getting beat down by a couple of schools that traditionally we beat, it's tough, right? So we started circling in these conversation loops, and it's the biggest one that I've been involved lately with, and I just want to talk about it. And again, all opinions welcome. This is not the show where I tell you what to think. I tell you how I feel, and then we chop it up. But the biggest one I'm seeing recently is the cupboard was bare. None of this is Luke Fickell's fault, or no, the cupboard wasn't bare. This is all on Luke Fickell. And guys, there's a middle ground. There's a middle ground to this. I want to start with the defense line, though. The defense line's not on Fickell. The defense line is not on Fickell. This is what we've done. This is what Wisconsin did in the 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 recruiting classes. Those first three classes are all Paul Chryst classes. In 2020, you got Cade McDonald, Aaron Witt, James Thompson Jr. 21, it's Bowlers, Isaac Townsend, Ayu Agdabon. 22, it's Kurt Neal, Tristan Monday, Isaac Ham. Like, these are really bad classes in general. And I'm not trying to trash anybody. Like, Kurt Neal is a good defensive lineman. If Kurt Neal is the best front seven defensive lineman you get across 3 cycles, that's a major problem. Like, that's a major problem. And you get defensive linemen by recruiting them, by developing them. You're not going to win in the portal for a bunch of defensive linemen. That's not a quick fix spot. This is from an on-3 talent evaluator. He was talking about how difficult it is to get defensive linemen in the portal. He said, this is a problem a lot of coaches are having right now. Quote, this is from On3. Do we try to get a couple of elite guys, or do we try to get 4 or 5 that can just play? The really good ones go to top 10 schools, and there's just not that many of them, end quote. Like, that's it. You're not going to fix the defensive line in the portal across 1 or 2 seasons, and you are not going to fix the defensive line in recruiting in 1 or 2 years, because those defensive linemen you're bringing in, even if they do hit, they're not hitting for a year or 2. It takes a year or 2 to grow defensive linemen. They're like little baby pine trees. You put them out in the back, and then in a couple of years, you have Christmas trees. But it doesn't happen right away. You don't harvest those suckers right away. You got to let them grow and take root. The defensive line is not on Fickell. That part of the cupboard was bare. He took over a spot that wasn't very good. And we talked about it at the beginning of the year. We talked about that being a problem spot. And if your defensive line is not good, I'm sorry, you're not going to have an elite college football defense, period. There's no amount of scheming that's going to fix that. There's no amount of let's stunt more, let's blitz more, let's play a 3-down line, 4-down line, and let's rotate more. There are things you can do to make it better. Make no mistake. I'm going to get into Tressel in a second, I promise you. He's not perfect here. He's not blameless in this. The defensive lines, the front 7 in general, is just not good enough. And you're not going to come into a brand new program and fix that in 2 cycles through recruiting high school kids if you're Luke Fickell. It's being rebuilt. And if you look at this year's class, even if you look at last year's class, Dylan Johnson is playing as a true freshman. That was a really good get that they flipped from Northwestern. He's already flashed a little bit. He's going to be better next year. We'll have to see what Hank Weber does. Not the highest rated defensive lineman. He was in last year's class. I think if you're a Badger fan, you thought you'd see a little more Ernest Willard Jr., the 4-star defense lineman they landed last year. He hasn't played yet. But, they took steps to start fixing this. This year's defensive line class is really good. Okay, it's Xavier Pono, Drayden Pavey, Jalen Williams, who might be the best player in this class, 4-star defensive end. in-state guy torn pet away. So there's 4 defensive linemen in this class. That's what they have to do every year. It has to be 3 guys, 4 guys until they rebuild the depth. So it's coming. Like it's happening, but that's going to take a minute, and you're not going to be able to stand up to really good teams without a really good defensive line. All right, let's see what's in the chats here. Sorry, this is a late show. We got the great Will Hanna in here. Will Hanna says, all offseason we heard about the influx of athletes at the linebacker spot. We are hitting this today. We are talking about the linebacker room. I think that was maybe the staff's biggest failing this offseason. The resources they put there and the lack of improvement, we are absolutely hitting that. Adam Otto, good dude, says something to watch while not sleeping. That's what I'm doing here. Insomniacs unite, man. JB, always love JB. Says, I was about to call it night. Ryan's keeping me up. The 19th Warrior. What's up, fellas? JB's Ryan's taking away from my beauty sleep. Matchy says, I need sleep. Yeah, all good. I love everybody in the community. Matchy says, is Willard transferring? I'll say this. I have heard things about certain players. I don't want to put it out on this until people announce. And this is not me saying yes or no on Willard. Do not take any inference from this. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to break any of that stuff. I just don't think, that's my spot. Some people talk to me on the side, and you kind of know where I'm at on certain people. This is the big picture thing I want to talk about transfers. There was just a tweet. It was put up yesterday from a Nebraska beat writer. They're expecting 30 to 45 transfers from their program this offseason. So when Wisconsin loses some guys this offseason, and they're going to lose some guys that Badger fans are going to look at and say, ooh, that I don't love that. Just understand it's going to happen everywhere in college football. It's just the new normal. And I'm not telling you it's good. I'm not telling you it's bad. I don't think Wisconsin, the numbers they lose are going to be that far of an outlier from what other teams lose. So I just prepare yourselves, but also don't take it as like a sign that the Coliseum is falling. Last year, Alabama lost their best defensive player to Ohio State. This is just unfortunately the new reality that we are in. Will Hanna says it's about stopping the run first on the D-line. I agree. That's it. And the defensive line that they inherited, and listen, I thought the defense line was a weakness. I thought maybe Lane would be a little better. Obviously, the James Thompson Jr. injury hurts, but it was always going to be a weakness. And that part of the rebuild is always going to take time. It is just always going to take a little bit more time. And there's no quick fix there. There's no quick fix there. Like we want there to be, and we can stomp our feet and we can hit the wall and we can yell and scream. Unless you're willing to pony up a couple $1 million extra, there's not a quick fix on the defensive line. There's just not. You got to be encouraged by the guys they brought in this class. You got to like Dylan Johnson last class. You got to hope maybe Ernest Willard sticks around because that is a talented kid. And it's not just the defense line. It's that whole kind of front seven. Who are the penetrating guys that you used to have coming off the edge that would just destroy a tackle unless they chipped? Where is the Herbig? Where's the Van Ginkel? Where's the Conley, the Orr, the Sanborn, the Sitchie? Where is the Zach? Did I say Bond? Zach Bond? Where's Vince Beagle? Like, gosh, you can just go on and on that list, right? Where are those guys on the defense right now? They're not there. You got to hope it's the young pieces. You got to hope it's the Post, the Heiberger, the Lafayette, these younger guys coming in. I think Allegro is that guy. I think he's one of those in that next wave of talent that can do that. But this front seven is just bereft of talent right now. And you're not going to fix that in a year or two. That is not on Luke Fickell, in my opinion, especially the defensive line. We are going to get into linebackers in a second here. Let's take a quick second for our friends of the show. I want to address people thinking that I'm getting a couple comments about Tyler Van Dyke, coming back. Could he be the guy? I'm going to tell you why Tyler Van Dyke can't be the answer at quarterback next year, as much as I like him. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers, a Locked On Badgers After Dark edition, which I really do appreciate every single person for tuning in. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show, our great friends of the show over at FanDuel. Listen, FanDuel is a long-term partner. I always talk about them. I'm not a great gambler, but I still enjoy it. Like, have fun with it. Please do responsibly. But FanDuel is a great opportunity. If you got a hunch, listen, you got to listen to the inner voice in your head sometimes. We all got them, whether you want to talk about them or not. I know JB's got one. JB's got like 3 probably. You got to listen to your inner voice in your head when you get a hunch. If you get a hunch on FanDuel, there's NFL, NBA, basketball, college, whatever it is, go take that opportunity on FanDuel, parlays, futures, teasers, spreads. It's all over there. Plus, right now, a $5 bet. If you win that sucker, and you're going to win because I got faith in you. Like, the people that listen to this show are sharp. You got better options, better things you can do with your time. You're not going to be listening to this unless you're sharp and you're tuned in. So I got faith in everybody here. Go take that $5 bet, win it, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win it. over at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's jump back into this show. And this show is mostly started as a community show. Like, I was going to just get a bunch of comments, but I kind of wanted to address the defensive line thing. But I do want to throw this comment up. This is one I got from, let's see, let me pull it up. Madtown Brew, who said, any chance TVD is actually the guy next year? Here's where I'm at on this. TVD suffered a major knee injury early in the season. We all know this, right? Even if he recovers fully, we're talking a long and lengthy recovery period, right? Where he's probably missing spring ball. He's probably missing some of summer. He wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire the first couple weeks of the season. Like, you cannot put your eggs in that basket. I'm sorry. Bring him back. Absolutely. If he wants to come back and you're willing to have him back, whoever that new offensive coordinator is, you think he's not going to rock the boat, you think he's depth? Absolutely. Right? He's been around the block. He's seen a lot of college football. Goodness gracious knows he's played for a lot of different coaches. If he's willing to be a good locker room mentor, provide some depth in the quarterback room, absolutely. Come on back. The Badgers Lounge is open for you. You cannot put your eggs in that basket. That cannot be the answer. So if he comes back, sure, but you got to go out in the portal this year. I think you got to land, minimum one guy. That's not even a question. The question is, do you need two? Right? So you have Carter Smith, who just committed in the 2025 class. Mabry Mettoyer is in that room from the 24 class. Cole LaCrue just left, right? You have Milo Spasovic, the preferred walk-on. I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but I like saying it. There's not a lot there, in my opinion. I don't know if maybe Mettoyer is going to be here next year. I don't think that decision has been made yet. But there's a chance he's not, right? He came to Wisconsin for Phil Longo. We're just connecting dots here. Tyler Van Dyke, I don't think you can count on him. Cole LaCrue, you lost. Carter Smith is a freshman. You should not count on him to come in right away and start. You probably need two portal quarterbacks, and that's being safe. So, again, if TVD wants to come back, absolutely. I hold no ill will. I don't begrudge him. Like, it's a terrible break. I wish him all the best. I've heard actually I've never met him, but I've heard he's an incredibly nice young man. So all about it. But they got to get a couple guys in the portal. They absolutely have to. Okay, let's see what else we got here. JB, of course, is on the Cole LaCrue bandwagon. C. Sleet says, I've heard Mabry stinks from my sources. He's a freshman. I have not heard that. Like, I have actually heard some positive stuff with Mabry, but he's a freshman. Either way, like, the jury should not be out on him yet. And if he comes back, that's great because he has physical skill set. He's pretty big. His good arm. I like the size. I like the mobility. But you have to get more bodies. And one of those bodies, you can get Tyler Van Dyke, but he can't count into your tally of bodies that we're absolutely getting or that we're counting on. The Grogan says it's bad probably losing our entire quarterback room. I'm not crying. You're crying. Yeah, man. I hear you. Like, it's tough if you're a recruiting guy, right? If you're or a recruiting gal, if you're into it, because you get attached to these players. That was kind of always the allure of college football, college basketball. You learn the stories, you kind of get attached to these players, and you weren't used to them leaving so soon. Now this is delving a little bit more into like my high school dating relationships. These things end quickly now. Like, you get into it and it ends quickly. There's not the long-term relationships anymore. So I get that. But just keep in mind, again, this is the current nature of college football, of college sports. It's more transactional now, and these players just aren't going to stay quite as long, unfortunately. Pete Herrings, my dad, says, it's all your fault, Ryan. I don't even know what that's in reference to, but it's probably true. 19th Warrior says, need a mobile quarterback. Yeah. No, it was one of my biggest frustrations with Paul Chryst. I just don't understand why he got so iconoclastic with his push towards, and Mertz could move a little bit, Cohn could move a little bit, but you need an athlete. You need a guy who can break the pocket, who can get a first down on 3rd and 6, who can extend the play. You don't need a runner. You don't need a dual threat guy. You don't need Robert Griffin, but you absolutely need a quarterback who can make that first free blitzer miss. You need a quarterback who can adjust to a broken play, push up in the pocket past the tackle that got blown by, extend to the right, and then throw across his body for 7 yards to extend it. You need it. You absolutely need it. And offenses are geared around that now. Defenses are struggling to stop it. And if you don't have it, you're putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage. If you don't have a mobile quarterback, unless you have an elite pocket passer, I'm talking like Andrew Luck. Well, Luck was mobile. Peyton Manning, like the college version of whatever Peyton Manning would be. I don't know who that would actually be. I don't know. But unless you have like an elite pocket guy who processes quickly, who has size, who has a really good arm, you can obviously win with that version. But unless you have that, you are basically playing chess without one of your chess pieces. You are doing yourself a disservice. Go find an athlete, go find a runner, go find somebody who can move. That's Carter Smith, by the way. That's also Mabry Mentoyer, by the way. It's also Jaron Mock, the 26 commit, has a little bit of that juice. I don't know if he's going to stay committed now that Longo is left. That's an interesting one. I like him. But that's an interesting one. All right, let's get into some more comments because, again, this was really meant to be a comment show. This one, Michael Paris says, what happened to Daniel Freitag? He's fine. He's on the roster. I think we underestimated, or I will. I'm not going to speak for everybody. I'll speak for me. I underestimated the impact Kamari McGee was going to have this year. Completely underestimated that impact. I thought he would play 8 to 10 minutes, right? And he's more in that 20 to 24 minute range. There's your Daniel Freitag minutes. Now, I don't know if Freitag's ready for that anyway. Some of the early sample set we saw with Daniel Freitag, it looks rushed. We saw the scrimmage against UW River Falls. I thought he looked a little rushed, it looks like he's trying to prove how good of an athlete he is a little bit, and he's not letting the game come to him. I still love the physical skill set. Big time athlete, great bounce, but it's just going to take a little bit longer. And that should be fine. One of the things we talked about before, Larry, even though I thought he would play more, I also said, like, don't put too high expectations on a kid because he's a true freshman. And that's what we're seeing. I'm not stressed about it. James Husby says, sticking with basketball for a second, we will see what happens when we get to the Big Ten when you get the foul calls on the road in the Big Ten. Yeah, so this team is feasted at the line. I would say this, like the way they're getting fouls called is still going to translate to good offense. Like they're getting fouls a lot of times by getting by people, by getting to the rim. That kind of stuff still translates to good offense. You're not going to get as many foul calls on a night basis in the Big Ten. That is very true, and it's a good point. That's going to hurt the team a little bit. But the process that they're using to get there, the process is still sound. And when the process is sound, the product is going to be sound, right? If you're manufacturing things, widgets, whatever it is, and your process is sound, if your assembly line is sound, you're going to keep producing good results. And right now, the Wisconsin offense is an assembly line of sound decisions. It's spacing, it's moving the ball in tempo, it's finding open shots, it's getting to the rim, it's putting pressure on the rim. Those things are translatable. And as long as they continue to do those things, the offense isn't going to go away. Takes a step back, sure. It's not going to go fully away, though. All right, let's go here. Harlan M says, you will lose to Minnesota. Harlan's such a dumb name. Sorry. Uncultured Barbarian, are any of these freshmen good enough to start next season? So I think he's talking about the 25 class. Oh, man. I don't think so. Maybe I'm trying to think of a lot. So you got to first look at positions. What positions can realistically start as freshmen? Running back, receiver, corner, maybe like linebacker-ish. And then you start to look at those spots. There's not a running back in the class, and they have Darion Dupree. There's not a corner that I think would come in and start right away. Eugene Hilton might be the one guy you circle and say this team does have some receiver needs. He's a bigger, more polished receiver, good size, obviously the son of an NFL receiver, so he's going to understand some of the nuances of it. Maybe he would be the guy, one guy would look at and say, maybe. We'll see. I do think a couple of the defensive linemen, honestly, much like Dylan Johnson has gotten reps this year, I think an Xavier Ponu or Drayden Pavey could play early next year. Because going back to segment one, that's a need on this team. But those dudes are also just oxen. Man, those are sawed-off tree stumps. So I think those guys could play a little bit, but not as starters. Jimmy Widemore, speaking of this is something he's talking to me on. He said, sold Mordecai, Van Dyke, Locke, Mabry, LaCrue, Evers. I heard all these clowns were the savior. People speak in such hyperbole. Like, why can't we treat online conversations and comments like you treat conversation over a beer at a bar, right? Nobody on this show has ever said any of those dudes were the savior, ever. Get excited about them? Absolutely. Like, I got excited about Mordecai. I don't think I got super excited about Locke, but I got excited about Mabry for sure. I like Cole LaCrue, still like Cole LaCrue. And I love the physical skill set Nick Evers had. It didn't translate. None of those dudes were the savior, but I liked them. They didn't work out. That's recruiting, man. That's life. Michael, Ryan, you are so hypocritical. Why does Tressel get a pass for lack of talent, but Longo gets the boot? Or why not scheme to maximize what you have? That's from Michael. We're going to hit that next. Locked On Badgers. Plus, talk about the linebacker room. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Welcome back to the Locked On Badgers. I want to hit this point right here, and then I want to get into the rest of your comments. I started off the show with, I don't think defensive line is Luke Fickell's fault. I do think this linebacker room is on this staff. I think it's easier to reload linebacker, but B, you went into this offseason, you brought in 5 transfer linebackers. Pius, Lowry, Sebastian Cheeks, Tackett Curtis. Who am I missing? Pius, Lowry, Cheeks, Curtis, and James Thomas. Jeez. You brought in 5 transfer linebackers, and this is maybe the least disruptive defense in college football. Like, Justin's throwing stats up there. It's not a lie. This team is last in the Big Ten in tackles for loss. I think it's last in sacks. It's one of the worst Power 4 teams in the country in TFLs and sacks and disruptive plays and turnovers. You brought these guys specifically in on the edge, the Piuses, the Lowrys. You brought these players, and not so much Cheeks. Cheeks is more of a future play, and I would actually argue he's flashed. But you brought these guys in, these players, Jaheim Thomas, more TFLs, and it just has not translated whatsoever. It's one of the biggest misses from this staff, right? You cannot invest those types of resources in an offseason at one spot and get this little of a result. You should have just, if this is what you were going to get, you should have just played Allegro, right? You should have just said, that's cool. We're going to play Heiberger a little bit more. We're going to get Allegro out there from the jump. We'll stick with Chaney, bring in maybe 1 or 2 guys, and we're going to call that a day, because the results have not been there. Not been there at all. And you can certainly argue these guys are helping with the depth for sure. Leon Lowry, Pius had a nice play against Nebraska, a really nice pass rush. The flashes have occasionally been there, but for what you invested from a resource standpoint, it's not just money. When we talk resources in NIL, we're talking money, we're talking transfer portal, but we're also talking time. Like, recruiting departments don't have an unlimited budget of time. You have a limited amount of money in this world, a limited amount of time, a limited amount of energy. You brought in 5 guys. You invested a tremendous amount of your recruiting effort, energy, time, money, budget, resources into this spot, and it hasn't worked. That's one of the biggest failings. We talk about the defense line all you want, but we also cannot get pressure on the quarterback, and that should be coming from those outside spots a little bit more, and it hasn't. So, yeah, like, this is where I started the show with. It's not all on Fickell. It's not all on Christ. There were spots in this team where the roster wasn't good enough, but there were also spots where this staff has had a chance to improve that roster, and they haven't done a good enough job of either identifying the talent, scheming that talent, coaching that talent, or putting the right talent in the right spots. I think linebacker is an example of a spot that this staff tried to fix, invested into it, and weren't able to do it. And that's on them. Like, we just got to keep it real. Like, there's a middle ground to these things. All right, let's talk Tressel. Because there's a ton of, let me hit some of these comments. Sorry. I love some of these comments. And again, the community is the best part of the show, 100%. The people that have been with the show from the jump, the people who joined us late, whatever it is, like, we have, and maybe this is just the 12:45 a.m. Central Time in me, but we have like the best online community I'm a part of. No other community I'm a part of is generally disrespectful, disengaged. I appreciate you guys so much. You have seriously no idea. Ben Elvin says Nick Clayton is a potential starter. I don't think he'll start, Ben, but I do think he has unique pass rush skills. I think he could be a situational guy. But here's my question, my concern with the staff. Like, I feel like Heiberger and Lafayette should have been situational guys this year, right? I don't know how much they want to play young guys. And maybe that changes as more of the Christ vanguard starts to kind of lead the program. Maybe becomes more of a best man up, vice most senior man up. And I'm not saying that's the case, because listen, we've seen Darion Dupree play, Xavier Lucas, like Kevin Haywood's been out there. I'm not trying to paint with broad brushes, but I do feel like there were times this year some of the younger defensive players could have gotten a look where maybe they give you a little more burst. And that makes me hesitant to say Nick Clayton will be a starter next year, but I think he's talented enough. Matchy says Mason Posa. Love Posa. Absolutely love that dude. Starter next year. I don't know. The linebacker room is tough, right? Because I think you're going to have some combination on the outside of some of the younger guys. You're going to have Allegro on the inside. I like Jancy quite a bit. Tyler Jancy's an interesting guy. I just think it'd be tough for Posa to start. Let's talk Tressel. The Grogan says Tressel lost me in Iowa. I have pretty consistently said I think Tressel has a tough job this year, right? Because I don't think there's enough talent in the front seven. I don't. I don't think you would take Tressel out and put somebody else in, and the defense would instantly take a jump up, even if it's a really good defensive coordinator. I just don't think that talent in the front seven, talent is more important than scheme in college football, right? Kirby Smart at Georgia talks about this all the time. There's a reason we recruit. Like, he talks about it all the time. It's about player acquisition. Now, it's hard for me to say that, though, and then see our defense be as bad as it was against Iowa. Like, scheme obviously plays a part. That Iowa game was atrocious. Now, players also have to make plays. There were multiple times Brendan Sullivan, the Iowa quarterback, got to the edge and made John Pius he put him on skates. He dropped him with a stiff leg, right? There was a play where he outran Darrell Peterson. In this Nebraska game, we missed about 13 tackles, right? Those things aren't on Tressel. Tackling is not on Tressel. Players also just have to make plays, wrap up. But yeah, I don't love the scheme. And I saw a comment from Will Hanna somewhere else, and I agree with them. Here it is right here. Will Hanna says, anyone can spin the defensive scheme any way they'd like, but it's too vanilla and not aggressive enough. I agree. I agree. It's not that I would like to see more aggressiveness. I think it's gotten a little too vanilla, and I do think there's an element of even if you want to be more aggressive, having better players makes that easier too, right? Like early in the year, there's some blitzes he sent, and his players just aren't getting home. And if you're not getting home with a blitz, now you're really exposing your back seven. I think maybe he's gotten in too much of a shell where he doesn't think he has the pieces, even if he wants to be a little more aggressive to generate pressure. So he's just going to say, we're going to back up a little bit, make you earn everything, and it is what it is. We don't have the guys. I think that's fine to a degree, but when you're playing in Iowa, who has no interest in throwing the ball, you got to just play like a 3-4, man. You got to just put another defensive lineman in there. Like that was a soul-crushing defensive effort against Iowa, and it makes me question it. Do I think he needs to be out? I don't know. I'll say this. I don't think here's what I'll say. I don't think he's been great this year. I don't think the scheme has been great. I think we've been dominated a couple times with teams that didn't have to make adjustments to us. If you want to move on from him, I think it's fine. As a play caller, you better get more talent. That's what I'll say. I think you can get more talent and keep Tressel, and the defense gets a lot better. I don't think you can get rid of Tressel and keep the talent at the same level, and the defense gets better. That's what I would say. So, yeah, sure. Like, if you want to move on, I'm not going to be heartbroken. I'm not a guy who likes calling for jobs in any sense, and I don't think coaches are generally dumb people. Like, Tressel didn't forget how to coach, but maybe sometimes things just aren't a fit. That being said, like, you better upgrade that talent on that defensive line. White Marlin says, are you going to apply to be the new OC, or do you have your eye on the DC gig? I would be terrible at both of those. I would love, maybe I can be part of the recruiting staff. I don't know. I'd be terrible at both those jobs. White Marlin's a good dude too. Always dropping knowledge in the Discord. Ben Albin says, want to see more Dylan Jones. He's flashed elite ability. Yeah, listen, I love Dylan. I'm just not sure. It's tough to get enough reps to go around at the linebacker spot. 19th Warrior says Tressel needs to dial up the pressure. Yeah, no, I agree there. I just try it once in a while. I feel like he's gotten into his shell a little too often. Realist, this is an interesting comment. Problem is, this program used to be a quarterback and 1 to 2 receivers away from being a top 10 team, whereas now all units seem to need significant improvement. It's kind of scary, but true. I mean, I would say, yeah, that's kind of scary, but true. The team still needs its quarterback. I do think receivers are okay. Tight end needs to continue growing. I wouldn't give up on Grant Steck if I was you. I think there's a future there still. I like the young cats on the offensive line, but they're a couple years away. Like, next year might be still a little bit of a building, but the last 2 offensive line cycles have been really, really good. I would put stock in those groups. Linebackers, some really good young talent coming in those spots. I'm high there. But yeah, it does feel like talent needs to be upgraded in several spots. I agree with that. Gabe Ramos, good friend of the show, talking about basketball. Love how they're just playing as a team. And I wanted to put this comment up there because it's so true. This team just plays team basketball. They're hunting good shots. They're moving the ball. It's pinging around. It's not sticking anywhere. It's fun. Like, this is what basketball is supposed to kind of look like, right? It's supposed to move the ball, find the mismatch, take open shots. If it's not there, swing it. It looks like they're enjoying it. And it's a fun, enjoyable product to watch. I really appreciate that part of it. Let's see what else we got up here in comments. Brian Hepting, Yak will be a star somewhere else next year. Yeah, I love Yak, man. I love Yakimelli. I make no bones about that. He's got to escape and get somewhere else. All right, let's wrap it up there. And we will, a bunch more comments here. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. I'm trying to pick out if there's anything that we haven't really talked on that's completely different. This was definitely just a kind of impromptu show, but do appreciate you guys as always. The community is the best part of this. And for everybody in there, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Locked On Badgers on Wisconsin as always. Again, here's the last thing I'll say. At times, it's really easy to get frustrated in a community like this that's passionate. Ultimately, we all have the same goal. We just want good Badgers football, good Badgers basketball, and we want to be in a community that's amazing and badass to hang in. That's it. And I think we're building it. Obviously, basketball looks great. I'm not out on football, although this year has been a grind. I will say that. On Wisconsin, thank y'all so much for doing it. Go check out Locked On Big Ten, all the biggest conference news over on the Big Ten channel. We'll talk tomorrow.